a lot of my life with a lot of these deep struggles that I have gone through privately and in my personal world and life publicly. And again, I think this brings us back to my my stellium in the 10th house in Libra.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to present myself, at least on the external surface, mostly well. I'd like to say, hard for me to sometimes own that, but yes, I think I've always used fashion and style. I'm wearing the blazers as like a 20-year-old, and I think it has helped me get opportunities into roles that maybe I was definitely not qualified for otherwise, because I have that good first impression I'm able to
You
give
look the
off.
part.
I look the part, and because I'm feeling good, I'm at least
Yes,
acting like it for,
exactly.
the time that I need to, so I can get the job or whatever. And it's helped open doors for me.
Yeah.
And so I really, it is what it is. I think some people don't want to feel that way about their appearance or about clothes, but I like to think of it as it's a powerful tool that we're here in the physical world to leverage, and we are in the physical world. And so, why not utilize these tools? And beyond whether or not it opens a door for you, if you feel more confident, you're just radiating your more unique soul frequency anyways, which is ultimately going to align you with only the opportunities that are meant for you. And I fully 100% believe that. So
Wow.
for me, it's a really powerful tool that I do think actually makes a difference in what you can bring in, what you can manifest, and what you can show up as.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. There's nothing more fascinating to me about this earth than the people who inhabit it. My mission is to create deep, vulnerable, and open conversations that invite our unique guests to share the arc of their ever-evolving journey through life, in the hope that their stories inspire and resonate with you, our listeners. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. What is up? Welcome to the Weekly Transit. I am here with Tiffany Gaines. What is up, Tiffany? It's so great to be with you. If you don't know Tiffany, she is an amazing astrologer, stylist, somebody that I've worked with very closely over the last couple of years. We're in for a very deep conversation. Tiffany, like me, is a Pisces moon. So, just put the headphones on and just, we'll see where we're going to go with this conversation. Who knows? But, my intention is to just introduce the audience of the Weekly Transit to Tiffany, an amazing woman. We're going to talk a lot about Tiffany, her story, how she came to be an astrologer, her journey along the way. And, Tiffany has had me on her podcast several times, Epiphany with Tiffany, which is just such a brilliant title. And, in those podcasts, like, we don't talk about you. So we were talking about whatever we were talking about with the transits and the planets for different celebrities or whatnot. So this focus is about you, Tiffany. So I want to welcome you to the Weekly Transit. Thank you for being here. And I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so excited for our conversation. I have to say, maybe we didn't talk about my story during the episodes you were on my podcast, because I have avoided my story. Parts of my story I've danced around, trying to just share the bare minimum. And when you asked me if I wanted to come on and share some of my story, I thought, maybe it'd be good for me to be up for the challenge, and especially if I'm with someone that I feel really safe and comfortable with to chat through. And so I just appreciate the opportunity, and I'm hoping to share something that resonates for your listeners.
Yes, awesome. Well, you're in a safe space, Tiffany. I mean, I'm so grateful for all the listeners of the Weekly Transit. So many supportive people always reaching out to me, encouraging me. And so I'm sure they'll be the same with you, because you are a beautiful, brilliant soul. And I know you're going to have so much wisdom to share in sharing your own story here with us on the weekly transit. So tell us a little bit about who you are. Where are you from? How'd you get into astrology? How'd you find me? How did we connect? I'm curious to hear. And before that, before we even get there, I just want to give a little insight, if I may, on your astrological code. As we
Yes,
said,
absolutely.
you're a Pisces moon. You're a third house Pisces moon. So a great conversationalist, because the third house is the house of communication. You have that natural curiosity. You're a great podcast host, a great listener. You have so many great questions, and you're curious to always learn. You are a Sagittarius rising. So you are very truthful, very forthright, very honest, even when you're in your most uncomfortable. So I know that you were saying before we hit record here that, I'm worried I don't want to say too much. Because that's what happens
Yes.
to the Sagittarius
Oh,
rising
yeah.
when they're uncomfortable. All of a sudden, it's just like,
Exactly.
and then you're a Libra sun, 10th house, Libra sun. So somebody who identifies with relationships and your goals and ambitions. You have 4 planets in Libra in the 10th house. You're a very driven individual, very ambitious, but relationships are very important to you. And your Venus is in Sagittarius in the 12th house. So when it comes to relationships, you're somebody who maybe gives more than you should. You're very compassionate, very empathetic, also with the Pisces moon. So you really feel what other people are feeling. This is what I imagine, is part of what makes you a great astrologer when you're working with clients, is you can really tap into what's going on with them and feel, their pain, their suffering, and help reflect to them through their astrological code the clarity that they need in order to support them in their lives. So, yes.
Well, I mean, this is all bringing me right back to the very first birth chart reading I had with you in
Mm.
the very early 2022. And I had found your podcast when I was already working in my own business at this time. I'd been doing what I was calling energy styling. I'd been doing it for a couple of years, and I was using fashion and styling and style exploration with like very basic astrology concepts, but I wasn't utilizing clients' full charts by any means. I was just using their big 3, and I was still learning about astrology myself. And I was in kind of one of my Sagittarius exploration phases where when something really grabs me, I just really go for it. I have to learn everything about it. And I was in that phase with astrology and had been, and found your podcast randomly and was immediately drawn to your insights, your
Mm.
wisdom, the way you talked about it. I was still really trying to grasp the concept of astrology as a full language beyond the sun sign, beyond the big 3. And I had to book a birth chart
Mm.
reading with you. And that first birth chart reading, I mean, just mind blown the entire time. It was, I'd looked at my chart on apps and in pieces and components, but I'd never had someone sit down and do a full chart reading. And not only was it the full chart reading, but your level of insights that you delivered and just things that you knew about me without ever speaking with me before. We were complete strangers
Mm.
before we hopped on that first Zoom call. And I just knew that there was a reason why we connected that day. And I learned about your Cosmic Pathway program. And then the rest was history. We started meeting every week, and it was just fantastic. So
Mm.
that really took me back when you just did that little mini reading. And yeah, I mean, it really resonates. What's so fascinating to me about astrology, you know, backtracking a little bit about me and where I'm from. Born and raised in California. I'm actually from Los Angeles, California, where I live now, although I just moved here 2 years ago. Never lived here as an adult. Moved up to the central coast of California when I was a small child, age 4, so I don't really remember LA very, very well, but grew up in California. And, I had a really interesting childhood in that I found myself really confused by myself a lot,
Mm.
confused about who I was, my purpose in the world. I didn't really understand my energy. Of course, I didn't have the context of phrasing it like I don't understand my energy when
Mhm.
I'm a kid, but I just felt like I had these wild up and down, mood swings and different sides of myself that would come out. On one side, I was extremely vibrant, had tons of energy, lots of creative spark from a very young age, always loved, clothes and styling things in my room and playing dress up and playing songs and performing, even if it was just for like a pretend audience in my bedroom. And just so much, willing to take risks, bold personality type, super fun, love to laugh and play. But then I also really had this side of me that was really dark. Like I felt like I almost had like a rain cloud over my head that to me didn't seem like other people my age had, in grade school. And I felt like I had this really contemplative, confused, dark side of me that sensed things that weren't necessarily verbally expressed to me, but something what didn't feel quite right. And I was extremely uncomfortable and didn't know how to quite put words to. I wasn't really leveraging my third house, moon, although it was Pisces energy for sure. Now that I know about astrology, but it was really hard because I would get really depressed as a very small child. We're talking kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and I would come home, I would have these migraine headaches, I'd be throwing up at school, my mom would have to come pick me up, things like that. And, even kindergarten, I was a kind of a cusp baby, so I started a little bit early, and I broke my wrist on the playground because I went on the big kids playground and I fell off and I broke my wrist, and I wore a cast most of my kindergarten. And so I was left-handed and I couldn't use the scissors. I couldn't learn to write or draw with the crayons. And so I had to redo kindergarten the second time. And of course, I got teased for that. And I took, things like that, which are just accidents, nothing wrong. But I internalized it as like I was just this bad person. Something was really wrong with me. Like I'm the only one that's making mistakes and everyone else seems to have it figured out. Like that was just this like narrative that I kind of ingrained with me at an early age.
Mm.
And it just really stayed with me because I think, of course, what I recognize with all my work with energy and energetics, when you have a story that's playing in your mind, you attract more of what you're believing and what you're thinking. And so I did. And my childhood was spent as a mixture of, having that vibrant creative light, but then, not being able to sustain it because I would get down in really low periods of depression. My headaches, and they were on a chronic kind of loop until my early adulthood. And between, having these really angry outbursts from not understanding my energy. And if my buttons would get pushed and I couldn't express myself, I would come out with like anger. And then
Mm.
I would have really low depression where I just felt like, the worst, soul on the planet, and felt like I was such a burden to my family. So, I felt like I just didn't understand myself, and that kind of energy carried into my adulthood.
Mm.
I just carried around low self-worth, not believing in myself, not trusting myself or my energy. And so I would, of course, always have these moments of like fabulous opportunities and things like that, but then I would also have these extreme lows where things would happen, unfortunate things that were pretty traumatic in my early adulthood, where then it would almost feel like it would just keep me back down to size. And then I
Mm.
would kind of hide and dim my light and dim my energy. And it was a cycle that just kept going for me, until I reached a rock bottom in my mid 30s, around age 34, 35, after a couple of things happened. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just got a thing on the screen.
Oh.
Um, a Riverside pop up
Oh,
that I
that's
wasn't
weird.
expecting. Yeah. Hopefully everything's fine.
Yeah, think so. I hope so.
And
I can still hear
we'll
you
find,
and see you.
yeah, we'll
Well,
find out later.
before you continue with your story, because
Yeah,
I don't want to rush through anything, and like
I don't
and
either.
so I don't want you, like, I do want to just kind of reflect on the childhood a little bit, because
Yeah,
it's really interesting to me looking at your chart, and just thinking about the migraines, and like, where does that come from. And I just wonder if it could be because Chiron's in your sixth house being squared by Mars, which is in
yeah,
your ninth house. So Mars squaring Chiron creates a lot of tension, but the sixth house is ruled by Mercury, which is the mind. So having Mars squaring a planet in your sixth house, the wound, Chiron, which could indicate maybe a wounding to the mind, or that mental pressure. But I'm curious. Did you have experiences with any ghosts or spirits as a child? Was it something like that, or you just felt very sensitive growing up, and like people's energy around you caused you to maybe hit some highs and lows? What do you think that was there?
well, it's interesting that you asked that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say both. I
Mm-hmm.
would say, I did feel like there was something, like you nailed it with the Chiron in the sixth house
Mm-hmm.
energy, trouble with my daily routine, trouble with the mind, trouble, processing my emotions and understanding my emotions for sure. I also, had times where I was really convinced that I was possessed by like a demon or something. And I grew up in a religious home, and it was like I felt like I was like the bad one that was like inserted into the family dynamic. And these are my stories that I've created.
Sure.
And not stories that like my parents or my family was planting towards me. These were my stories that I felt deeply inside and felt very real at that time. Um i i don't know. I don't know what that was all about, other than I think that I just so didn't understand myself. And I had a version deep inside that was desperate to be seen and expressed, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the tools to do it in a healthy way at that time, or in a way where I could even explain to my parents what was really going on for me. But of course, it got to the point where we went into family counseling, and then it turned into Tiffany seeing a therapist as a kid.
Like
um
there's something
not
wrong with
not
you.
it's not consistently, but like
Mm-hmm.
we tried it and stuff. And yes, it was like I became that identified patient of the family, where
Mm. Right.
I felt like I was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my family would be like so happy and la 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 without me in the mix, which is, I can see now, so not true. But at the same time, I also know that I was a lot
Mm.
of energy. I don't think my parents, they did the best that they could. And I just don't think they always understood to what to do there, because it was a lot. And
Yes.
I think we were all trying to understand it. And it was quite painful for all of us in
Mm.
our own individual ways. And yeah, it definitely was something that left a mark for me that I've had to do a lot of work around, and make as much peace as I can with. And I'm lucky that now at this point in my journey, I can talk about it, more candidly than I ever have before. This is especially the most candid.
Mm.
And also that I don't beat myself up around some of that like I used to.
So,
But
before you continue, I just, so it's interesting because like I see in a lot of clients or people that I know that are Cancer rising, they have similar experiences as you. They're very sensitive. They may experience ghosts or beings that are not in the physical here. And it's interesting because your moon is squaring your ascendant. So even though you are a Sagittarius rising, I would, associate you to being akin to a Cancer rising, because when the moon is in alignment with the ascendant, and especially the square, because I feel like the square gives you less control over filtering through the frequencies or energies that are being emanated to you. So when you come into this world as a child, and it's like you look at your family, it's like they seem fine, or all these other kids at the school seem fine. Like, what's wrong with me? And it's
yes.
because you're bringing in all of this energy is being put upon you, and you don't know how to protect yourself from it if it's negative, or filter it through even if it's overly positive. So you're just really riding the waves of the up and down, and it's like, oh my God, like I don't know how to handle this. So you're hitting these really highs, these extreme highs, which is natural with Sagittarius, but then the extreme lows, which is also natural with Sagittarius as well. But it's almost like you can't control it as a child because your moon is squaring that. So you're getting affected emotionally in a way that's beyond your capacity to really help yourself.
Yes. I mean, that is how I could really say was a big part of my experience. And I think now I still feel energy. Of course, it's never left. I feel energy very deeply still, very intensely, but the boundaries have gotten much better. The understanding that I am prone to, over extension of energies, being able to feel them at any time, has made me over isolate at times because it can be quite overwhelming. But then building that resilience over time, like what is that natural bandwidth for me where I know I can, be amongst people, which I love to be amongst people because, I have contradictory energies like most people do in their charts, where I have all this air, this Libra energy that wants to be around people and craves relationships. I have all of this fire energy that's very external and very outgoing and wants to be out there, wants to be seen, wants to do. But then, that square to my ascendant, even though it is a fire ascendant, but that square from my moon and Pisces, like there's a big deep part of me that wants to just hide a lot. And I have to really find that healthy balance for myself, and to just be able to exist in my own thoughts and understand what's mine, what's other people's. And I think that was one thing that was really liberating for me about learning astrology. It's like when you have a lot of water energy in your chart, strong water placements or strong moon placement, uh, you know, you can feel things that a lot of people think is theirs and not necessarily the case. And you have to understand, start to really understand the difference, which takes time to really unpack. But when you can start realizing that not everything is yours, and just more universally speaking, not every thought we think is something we need to be believing. But when you're a kid, everything that comes up you really think and you believe it, and that was certainly the case for me.
So I think it's fascinating just in thinking about your journey. It's so important to understand where you began, because when you understand where you began, then it makes sense as to why you are where you are. Because it sounds like, you you had, that you're just so sensitive in taking on, when I think of that Cancer frequency, and the moon rules Cancer, and so the moon is squaring your ascendant, so it's like you're a Cancer rising, and Cancer is the crab, and the crab is that the crab picks up sand and carries it with it along the beach, not because it wants to, but it's just a product of its environment. So you became very sensitive to the energies or the energetic frequencies of others, and you were picking that up and carrying it with you through life. And because of that, it's what cued you in to working with energetics and really understanding how energy works, so that you could get a handle and an understanding on yourself.
I mean, ultimately, this is a survival technique for myself.
Right? You're like, I
When
gotta figure this out.
I hit a point a couple of times where I'm like, well, I don't think I can get out of this. And so how can I survive and not be so miserable and feel like it's so hard all of the time? And that's when the magic really started to unfold, when I
Yes.
got to that dark place of like, I can't do this anymore, but
Yeah.
I know that I'm here. So what now? What do I do with all of this? And that's when magic started to happen for me.
So what were some of those dark places that, led you to uncovering? Because I mean, I can totally empathize with you, as a Pisces moon. Like, I mean, I had my moment where and this was just one moment, but there's so many moments where I was like in the fetal position, just like praying to God or any, higher power out there that cares about me, to help get me through these challenging experiences that I was having in relationships with people, or relationship with myself and my work, my career, what I'm attempting to achieve. There's some really, really dark places where I felt in despair, and didn't know how I was going to get out. And, it was, the astrology that ultimately like gave me the understanding. Is like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, this is like, okay, this is who I'm supposed to be. And so once I had that self-awareness and acceptance, then I could appreciate and love myself for who I was. So what was that for you? Where did you?
Well, I'm glad you were able to get to that place,
Yeah.
because I mean, I can really resonate, That's
Mm-hmm.
what we've always had a strong connection with, that fellow Pisces moon
Yes.
kinship that we share, because
Yes.
I know you really see that and feel that for me too, and I do
Mm-hmm.
for you. Um, what I would say, for me, it got me to the point of when I was trying everything in my power to avoid myself, to avoid my pain, to numb my pain,
Mm-hmm.
to, run from my pain, to try and use things, like medications, in my 20s and 30s, early 30s, I went on some different prescription medications. I was working with a doctor, and my dad was diagnosed with cancer in my late 20s, and we knew that it was a terminal type of cancer, and so they were doing everything they could to prolong, but we knew it was inevitable, it was coming. And of course, my depression and anxiety was already there. I was already being treated for some baseline things, but it really started sparking up when that was all going down. And then after he passed away in 2012, I went through this really dark period where I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't, you know, I was having a harder and harder time with my daily, functions and responsibilities, showing up for my job, things like that, and seeing this doctor. And it's just like, I'm just so depressed. And he just kept giving me more and more medications. And I was in a phase in my life where I was socializing a lot. I was drinking a lot. I was, smoking a lot of weed, things like that. When you're doing those things and you're also taking a lot of these medications that I was taking, it's a really lethal combo. You're not supposed to do that. Now, nothing happened to me on that level. Obviously, I'm still here, but it is a really potent combo where it certainly doesn't help your depression and anxiety. If not, it makes it worse. But it
Mm.
also causes a lot of symptoms in the body when you're not using the medications properly. And I just was not. I was not in a place where I was taking care of myself. I was really in a bad way. And so I hit a point where I had to get some, medical treatment for a really low point that I hit.
Mm.
And it was kind of that like wake up call, like how low are you going to go? Like this is not this is not really what the path is, right? And like just trying to like really have that like mirror gut check with myself and having to do a lot of work. I had to take I was lucky at the time, the job I was working at, I was able to take a sabbatical from work for 30 days and do an outpatient program and get some good support. But it crept up again because I hadn't fully looked at it. I hadn't fully dealt with everything because I realized when my dad died, it was not only I was grieving him, but I was also, it was a symbol of like the grief from my childhood and a lot of the culmination of things that
Mm.
I had been kind of avoiding, and early heartbreak. I was engaged in my early 20s and it didn't work out, and then they moved on and got married, and that was really hard. And then I got engaged again a second time in my early 30s, and then that engagement also didn't work out. And so I had planned two weddings, had two wedding dresses, all the things, and just a lot of shame around that at that time, even though looking back, of course, everything happened for a reason and in the right way. But just really challenging things. And it was like, instead of, doing the real work required, which sometimes I really don't think we're set up in society to, if you're going through something like that, to be able to afford to take the time off to really heal and look at yourself. You do the best you can. You're working and you're making it the best you can. And a lot of people, I think, do have success on medications. But for me, being so sensitive
Mm.
and also not taking the medications correctly with my lifestyle choices, it took me down a slippery slope a couple of times. And the last time it happened was in 2016. And it was that wake up call that was like, you're here.
Mm.
You are here. And do you want your life to be this, in this mess and this big of a hole? I had developed all of these physical symptoms. I was a shell. I felt like I was a shell of myself. I'd lost a lot of weight. I was developing neuropathy in my hands and feet. I was
What does
having
that
vision
mean? What is
problems,
neuropathy?
like tingly,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
losing feeling in my
Mm-hmm.
hands and my feet because I was just on so many
Wow.
medications. And um vision problems. I barely, like, everything I ate hurt my stomach, like debilitating pain. And I was just like, this isn't a life. Like,
Mm.
what am I doing? And I really, I know that this, I'm heartbroken and I'm grieving and all of these things that haven't worked out the way I was hoping. But like, there's got to be something that's more than this. And I really wanted to get out of this whole life thing, but I can't. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that I can. And and it's my responsibility. I'm the only one that can get myself in a better place. And
Wow.
I had to have that, call to
Mm.
myself.
Mm.
And then it just became, okay, well, how do we get out of this hole that we've dug
Mm-hmm.
ourselves in? We have all of these health problems. We have, all of these medications. And it was like a choice where I knew, it was like, I knew I couldn't keep doing my life the same way. I couldn't keep, partying the same way. I couldn't keep taking any of those medications. I was like, I'd wake up in the morning, my gums were bleeding from some of the medication, like the side effects. And I was just like, intuitively, despite how much was going on in my system that was suppressing my intuition at that time with all the medications and whatnot, I intuitively knew my body was telling me stop, like
Mm.
no more, like you're done with these.
Yes.
And so I had to prioritize, like, how am I gonna, get treatment for all of this and get off of medications and stuff. And so it was like a slow process. I had to slowly detox off all these medications. I started seeing a team of specialists at Stanford who we were trying to figure out with all my health problems what was going on there. And when they were, basically saying, you're depressed, you just give yourself some time. I was just like, I need to dig deeper. Like there's something else going on. And of course, my mom totally agreed and wasn't feeling right about what was happening, what she was witnessing. And she's like, look, I found out about this holistic wellness practice in the Bay Area that's supposed to be really good. It's a totally different way of, working with medicine than, Western medicine. It's a holistic medicine practice, and I'll pay for it if you'll go. And, that was a huge help because financially I wouldn't have been able to afford to go to a functional medicine doctor for holistic treatment. But I was desperate, and my body needed a lot of support. And so I took her up on it. And that really started that year, that 2016, the year of 2016, I really started this process of the shedding all the old and, starting the very long and delicate process of like, what this new version of me was going to be that was uh, dedicated to figuring herself out.
Mm.
And to my credit, even at my low points, that's something about myself that I do take pride in, is that I've always been willing and determined to look at myself and to understand myself, even if I couldn't figure it out. But I wasn't ready to give up on myself. And I'm lucky that I got to the point where I could really see that, even though it was very painful at the time, so that I could start getting partnered with the right people that could really help me get better.
Wow. Wow. What a journey. What a journey, Tiffany. I want to ask more about that process, but I just, I can really empathize with you, in your experience. Like as a Pisces moon, I think I had my first sip of alcohol. First beer was when I was like 13 years old, so I was fairly dependent on alcohol and later drugs and for 20 some years. And my dad, I found out that he had terminal kind of cancer when I was in my late 20s. And so after he passed, I just it was a lot of escapism. And the cannabis, like weed, was a major part of my life for about 10 years after my dad passed, until I did an ayahuasca journey in 2019. And you're not supposed to do any sort of substances at all for like 2 weeks prior to, and I did it, and I never went back and did any weed since then. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So and it was interesting in coming off of the weed. it it brought me back to being about in the fifth grade. Fifth and sixth grade was when I first started, experimenting with alcohol, let's say. And so
Mhm.
it really forced me to get back to that point of
Wow.
who I was at that age, and just really dealing with the angst and the anger and all the different feelings that I was experiencing as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, that I didn't know how to deal with at the time. It's like now I had to deal with them as an adult. And so, but 2016 was when I, had my awakening to get into astrology and to really dive into it. So that was a very pivotal year for me as well. So,
That's fascinating
yeah.
how many and we've always had this because when we've worked together, certain times things have come up too where you've shared a little bit, and it's like we've always had like kind of similar, not similar stories, but like similar connection points in
Yes.
within the
Well, and
stories,
I
which
grew
is
up in a very religious household as well,
right.
so astrology was never even a thought. I didn't even know what astrology was until I was in college. It became a conscious thought for me.
Right.
So, I'm just, tell us more about like what a functional medicine doctor is, and like what was that experience like? How did they help you?
Well, my experience with a functional medicine doctor, I was at Chris Kresser's practice,
Mm-hmm.
and fast forward to 2019, I ended up doing his health coaching program because I was so inspired by my own progress and
Mm.
and how life-changing it was. So, I'm somebody who really believes in the principles of his practice, and he was a big proponent of a paleo diet. So to even start as a baseline before you get any tests done to see where your symptoms are at or anything like that, they put you on a 30-45 day paleo reset protocol diet where you're just eating like very simple pure foods, proteins, meats, starches, and vegetables and fruits, but you're cutting out. Like I was on a standard American diet, like most people
So
prior
what were you
to
cutting out?
working with it. So my whole diet, I mean, anything processed. I loved cereal. I mean, I ate often like a bachelor. Like I had a lot of frozen dinners in my
Mm-hmm.
freezer. I was, when I lived alone, which I did at that time, it was just I was on fending for myself, and I would just eat cereal. I would eat, microwave dinners, and none of that stuff is on this kind of reset diet. So even just starting that part of the process was like a huge shock to my system. But
Hmm.
it's fascinating, and like they say, within, the first once you figure it out, the first 30 to 45 days, it's amazing how much more clarity I was feeling. I For the first time, I was, feeling energy in my body that I hadn't been able to feel. Now, I still had a lot of things I was working through, but I could tell that something was starting to shift already just through that alone. And then you do undergo, a lot of tests based on your symptoms. You meet with a practitioner, you do a really deep dive intake, and based on your symptoms, they recommend a series of tests that you take, and you take most of them at home, and everything's pretty time intensive. This whole process is not for the band-aid treatment. It's really looking at the root cause, and so that is a slower, more methodical approach, and it's much more layered. And that's why a lot of people don't do it, and myself included. For years, I would just always go to the doctor and get the
The
whatever
pill.
prescription
Yeah,
and move on.
exactly. Yeah.
And so this was a completely foreign concept to me. And we're talking 2016, which there were functional medicine practitioners around at that time for sure, but the wellness space wasn't like it is today, where it's much more common now. It was just before, I think, a big surge of that was starting to happen. And in the Bay Area, though, they're in on that kind of stuff. It's very, granola, like it totally fit the vibes there. So I took advantage of it, and I was like, I'm going to try it. And it
Yeah.
was wild. I mean, I'm working a full-time job, and I'm like meal prepping because I couldn't eat out.
Yeah.
And everything you're conscious of the oils that you're using in
Mm.
your food, like every single detail. But it was for me, I had a lot of inflammation in my body. I'm sure from all of the medications I was taking, layered with all of the stress and the lack of sleep for years and all the things I'd put my body through. And so really calming the inflammation down was a huge necessary part of the ingredient, which the food was a huge component of. And then these different supplements I went on, I had gut issues, gut dysbiosis, SIBO, things like that. I had different parasites and Lyme co-infections, and I mean they find all kinds of stuff. And I just kept doing one protocol after a protocol, and I would finish a protocol, and then I would have to start another protocol. And it got to a point where, look, it really helped me a lot. In 2020, I kind of hit a plateau with it, where I was like, I think I'm choosing to be okay. Like I'm good enough.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I don't know if we're ever going to get all of our things sorted out. And I think, it gets to a point when it's a blessing when you get to that place, when you
Mhm.
can recognize that, right? But for the first couple of years in particular, I would say from 2016 to 2018, it was like very intensive for me, and it was a survival thing. Like it actually gave me my life back, life
Mm.
changing. People started, like, first I noticed, of course, but then my family, friends started to notice, and then it was like, work colleagues would start noticing changes in me and noticing I had more energy at work. And then people started asking questions about my food. And like people started becoming curious about it, because when they could witness a change in me, they started getting curious about learning about it more for themselves. And that's when it started really kind of clicking for me that, wow, we as humans, each of us, have the capacity to heal ourselves.
Mm.
And it doesn't require all of these Western medications that we've all been, instructed to go down. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because
Sure.
I still use some of those things, to
Mm-hmm.
be clear.
Right.
But there are ways in which we can support our body in a more holistic route that's less invasive, it's more time intensive, it's more energy
More
intensive,
work.
way more work. However, it's a lifestyle change,
Mm-hmm.
and everything started changing. But I made that conscious choice, and there's drawbacks to it, because when I was really focused on it those first couple of years, I was not social. I really pulled back from socializing and going out, because I wasn't in that mindset anymore. I
Right.
was focused on my healing, survival, going to my 9 to 5, and then, resting and recharging and trying to heal myself on the weekends. And I had to be kind of selfish with my energy around that time, because I was in kind of that more survival place at that period. And that was painful,
Hmm.
because, when you are young and you're single, and you feel like you should be going out so you
Right.
can meet people, and of course, I love spending time with my friends. That was a drawback.
Mm.
And feeling like I was really different because of how I chose to eat. But for a while, it was really important. And then it got to the point where I was able to recognize I also want quality of life. So how can I bring in the balance? What's the right balance for me? And it really goes back to what we're talking about how I find boundaries around energy.
Mm.
It's the same thing around my lifestyle choices now. I find that I'm extremely sensitive across the board when it comes to pretty much everything, and so little is a lot for me. So I've had to figure out over the years, and it's taken me a long time to understand what that, um, personal, plan is for myself that makes sense, where I can still feel like I can be part of, the more larger collective human experience that I want to be a part of, as well as like really stay focused on what makes me feel just vibrant and alive, which is a really very focused form of discipline that I don't always want to keep up, because it is a lot of work at times, but it is still very important to me.
Hmm.
That
Wow.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. Well, you had to learn what was important to you. You had to learn
yeah,
what was worth your time, your
yeah,
energy. And it
exactly.
sounds like you were completely depleted and you decided that you wanted to live. And in order to live, you couldn't live the way that you've been living because
Yeah,
it wasn't leading you down a path of vibrancy where you would be thriving. And so you had to change something, and thankfully your mom was able to support you, and you were able to get into this program that really taught you. It sounded like over this 2 year period from 2016 to 2018, you learned how to live in a different way than you'd ever understood or knew in the past. And what's really interesting to me, and just understanding and looking at your chart, is in 2016, which was when Saturn was crossing over your ascendant. So you were going through a restructuring of your personality, of the essence of your soul, of how you put yourself forward in your life, your face, your body, like all of it was going through a restructuring. It was also squaring your moon, of course, then, which,
Exactly.
restriction in the home, not going out, not being social, because you needed to come back to yourself and regenerate yourself in a new way. But, as it was conjunct your ascendant and squaring your moon, it was also forming a sextile with your Saturn, and then your Sun, and then your Jupiter. And so it's like you're coming out of this cocoon and coming out stronger,
Yes.
empowering yourself through this experience. It like squared your moon and conjuncted your ascendant first, but then it formed that sextile with the Sun. It's like, okay, this is working. Or Saturn, and it's like we see that you're doing the work, and we're regenerating you, and then it formed that alignment with Jupiter where you're really just then thriving by the time you get to 2018, and you're like, yeah, I think I'm good. Like I figured this out. Like I found the balance between, I was going too extreme before, and now I was going extreme the other direction. And now I've found that middle ground, that Libra,
Yeah.
where I can find the balance between, not always having to have this crazy strict diet, but not going off the rails on this other side either.
Right. I mean, yes, and I actually looked up, of course, 2016 was such a pivotal time, and so I noticed that Saturn in my 12th house around some of the, because I love to look, I know you do too, like
Mm-hmm.
go back on a date when something
Yes,
significant
it
happened
makes sense of
and look
things.
it up, and it's like so freaking validating every time. But yeah, when a significant, the breakup happened in early 2016, Saturn was still in my 12th house, approaching my ascendant, and like it totally fit the energy I was experiencing at that
Yes.
time. Like,
And opposing your descendant was the
yes,
relationship, creating tension
yes,
around that.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And I will say that these were wins I was experiencing, right? So seeing my progress, seeing these wins, I was still dealing with lingering things. Like there were things, like things that I like to do, like I had a binge eating problem since I was a kid, and I would just hang on to that habit. It was one of the more lingering habits for me, and weed was another one where
Mm.
I still, I had gotten off the medications. I had really gotten off alcohol for the most part, but started bringing it back in a little bit, and I was finding my balance with it that, more or less was getting more uncomfortable. But those things were still, holding, like I had a firm grasp, and I was, finding compassion for myself too, because it's like I'm trying to do all this stuff. Like I can't do it all overnight. And so, I still had things that I needed to work on, and I still had some health challenges that I was working through. It was definitely a process that went into the early 2020s, but enough progress was happening where things like repressed emotions, I think, especially that I hadn't had access to in years,
Mm.
or maybe even ever, because I was seeing it in such a clear lens for the first time. It was sparking something deep within me where I remember vividly, I was on a family vacation with my family in Maui,
Mm.
magical family vacation in Maui. And I was taking these beach walks and by myself, and I was listening to all these health and wellness podcasts and hearing people's stories, and it could resonate so much what people were sharing, and hearing what these coaches were doing. And I was just like working at this really cool job. I was in marketing and I was doing social media. I was like I had a really good role at this cool opportunity, but I had hit, over 10 years of doing kind of a similar role in social media marketing, where I was really ready for something new. And I was getting so inspired by my own progress and by the stories I was hearing from other people, by just being more immersed in the holistic health and wellness space. And I was just getting these pings when I was in Maui, like, you could do this.
Mm.
and maybe this is like a new path. But it was like something was coming into me, in through it, almost felt like it was coming in through my body when I was like doing these walks, and I didn't quite understand it. And, fast forward to the spring of 2019, I was on a business trip down here in LA, and I was down here to oversee a photo shoot, and I was here a little bit early. So I took a cab to the ocean because I'm a Pisces, and I have to go to the water. It centers me, it grounds me. And I went to the beach in Santa Monica, and I was sitting on the beach, and I was just like, I really want to make a change. I really am ready to do something that can look how much progress I've made. I would love to be able to help other people find access to stuff like this, because I just don't think it's not enough is known about it yet. And I just really would love to help people, because the people that have been placed in my life have helped me so much. And is there a way that could make this work? And I was just really soul searching that day. And I got back and I took out a small loan, and I was going to figure out, doing school in tandem with working full time, seeing if I could, start a health coaching program on the side and like do it in between. I didn't quite know how I was going to figure it out. And then unexpectedly, I got a blessing in my life very shortly thereafter, an unexpected inheritance, which now we can kind of laugh about because Scott knows, but for the listeners, my North Node is in the 8th house in Cancer, and 2019, the transiting nodes were moving through my 8th house, the North Node moving through my 8th house, and it was so unexpected though. And I think Uranus was in my conjunct my part of fortune.
This was when in 2018
This
was
was
this?
2019.
2019, yeah.
This is
When
the
do you remember what
spring,
month?
like around April, May
April,
time
May.
frame.
So April, May. Yeah, Uranus was conjunct your part of fortune.
Yeah.
And
Unexpected
unexpected
blessing.
fortune coming in.
And
Yes.
so, I mean,
Jupiter was
it
conjunct your Neptune. It was like, oh wow, like a dream, a fantasy coming into fruition. And of course, like, yeah, the North Node was transiting through your 8th house, the house of other people's money coming into you. Yes.
and through ancestry, and it was unexpected in that there was just no way that I was even thinking about it, or it was on my dad's side of the family, and I don't know, it just wasn't something I had ever considered. And but when it happened, it was that it felt like that moment where I was getting tapped on the shoulder. Here you go.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do now? And I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had the program already picked out. I knew when it started. And so I gave notice at my job in the summer, and it was hard to do that because they gave me so many opportunities at company, and they were really championing me and cheering me on. And it was really hard to part ways, but they also, I think, knew ultimately they saw what was happening as far as like how inspired I was with my health journey, and kind of witnessing a change in me since I had been there a few years. And I think ultimately of course they wanted me to be happy, and saw that I was kind of on a path. But that was hard. It was hard to leave, but I also knew I had to do this, and I have to try this. There was no part of me that didn't think that wasn't the right thing to do. And so, but it was a big move. It was a bold, it was a big risk.
Yeah.
I don't even think in retrospect, I know actually that I don't think I realized how big of a risk it was that I was taking on myself. And maybe if I'd really thought about that more, I would have talked myself out of it. But that's not how it happened. And I jumped into the experience, the health coaching program. I did yoga teacher training, and I was still doing my own inner work. I was still working with coaches. And then during my health coaching program, I found and teamed up with my first kind of spiritual guide,
What was
who
that about? Yeah.
Christina the Channel.
Yeah. Tell me
I,
about Christina the Channel.
well, I mean, there's so many things to say. She's incredible. One second,
Yeah.
have to change my charging.
Okay.
Christina the Channel. She's incredible. I mean, I was following her through her health journey. She had
Mm-hmm.
she's had a podcast for a number of years, and it originally started as a the paleo podcast kind of show where she really dove deep into that lifestyle that I could so identify with. And so even though I'd never met her, everything she was talking about was like my new world. I was also immersed in myself, and she really also leveraged in spirituality tools. And so she was offering this program where it was just like a new way for health coaches to go about structuring their health coaching practice. And so I am in this health coaching program. I'm already noticing that I'm feeling a little differently about how I wanted to structure my business than I originally intended, but I hadn't quite figured it out yet, the details. And her program really spoke to me. And so I did this program, and it was where I was really introduced to a lot of the spirituality tools for the first time, like astrology, human design, energetics. I was already doing kind of manifestation energetic stuff on my own a little bit, but it was really through her program where I was learning more and more about it. And that's when I had that kind of first aha moment where I was like, doing some of the health coaching, but I knew there was something more. I was also, really reawakening my creative gifts that had been really repressed when I was sick and for years just not really able to pay attention to them. They were all coming back online, and I knew that I wanted to approach my practice differently than I intended, and I wanted to bring in more of my creativity. And I also really identified with the basics of astrology that I knew, and wanted to bring that into my practice as well as like a kind of a unique twist to help people understand what some of their personal style might be about. But I wasn't even using like their Venus, for example, which is what you helped me. Well, I think one of our first sessions
Yeah.
together, you're like, are you looking at their Venus? And I'm like, no, but I wasn't even looking at their birth charts. I was
Right.
just like, I was just asking them.
Yeah.
But even with their just knowing their big three, it was amazing when I was working with clients how that unlocked so much about where people were getting stuck in their style, where they weren't feeling empowered because either they weren't tapping in to their big three all the way, or there was a part of it that was repressed. And it was like helping them reawaken that part of themselves. And it was a great way to really understand a basic sense of what their style could look like when I started shopping for them without knowing who they were very well. And then I would also layer in human design because I learned, shopping behavior based a sacral generator shopping behavior is going to be quite different than someone who is an emotional authority. And so building that into my practice, and this was we're talking 2020, so I had a lot of time to really think through these scenarios at home because everything was kind of shut down. But Christina was my first client. She took a bet on me, and I really developed my signature program, my energy styling program through working with her. And it just kind of kept evolving after that into 2021 was when I officially launched my website and my business. But I was already, beginning to take clients in 2020. And yeah, it's just been a journey with her. And I did, a couple of programs with her outside of the business program that I mentioned afterwards. But she's just been an incredible influence on me as well that I've been
Mm.
very thankful to have been able to work with.
What has it been like working with her as a mentor? Like, what did she? What have you learned from her?
Well, one thing about her that I always really appreciated is the way she just calls you out on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't hold back. She really knows who she is. You know, she no, she sees people so deeply and doesn't put a filter around it, but she does it with love at the same time. And so if you can really appreciate that kind of delivery, which I love a real talk delivery, I really resonate
That's
with
your
that.
Sagittarius rising.
I I just really love it. I can't always do it myself because I have a lot of Capricorn in my 10th, my
Mm-hmm.
10th house,
Mm-hmm.
all my stellium in the 10th house, and my south node in Capricorn keeps me like a little more buttoned up, but ultimately I do have that in me, and I love the filterless approach that she really offers in a lot of ways. And so that realness, rawness really spoke to me, her delivery. But she also, of course, used a lot of energy work, energy healing, and weaved it into her work. And the way she was so tuned in, it's just inspiring when you see the way that she's able to not only share examples from her own life and experience, but the way I can see her work with other people in the groups containers that I was in. I was just like, she is just she believes in herself, and she believes in her work and her gifts that she clearly has, and she believes in every single thing that she's telling me. So why shouldn't I believe it? I'm the one that's having a hard time believing it for myself.
Yes.
And so I just was always really inspired by that, because she was able to change her life on a lot of ways from a healing journey that she went on, for herself, and is so attuned to living her life based on her frequency and what she's attracting in, and magical things just kept unfolding the more and more she tuned into her frequency. And I just found it so inspiring. I still do. When I
Yeah.
think about it, I'm like, it's amazing.
So
Yeah.
she helped inspire you to do what you were doing with the styling, and then adding in the energetics with the astrology and the human design, and that.
Well, she, like, through working with her, she was really helping remind me. She's like, "You have all these creative gifts. Like, why aren't you using them?" And I'm like, "It's a good point. Why am I not?" Like, and I was so focused. Like, I have to be a health coach. Like, that's what I signed up for. That's why I left my job. Like, this is what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like almost like I was scared to reimagine it a different way. I was scared to think outside the box. But
Mm-hmm.
then once she helped me see that I could, then everything started shifting, and it started becoming much more exciting and magical, and it felt a lot more aligned. So she was kind of like you know, helping remind me that there's something in there that I'm not utilizing. And so even now, I work as an astrologer, but I still do the styling. And
Okay.
what was great is I took a break from it for a while. I think I needed to kind of focus on the astrology. I really wanted to do that. And but I recently brought it back in over the summer for select clients that would still come to me,
Mm-hmm.
that I was just like, gosh, I really would love to work with them. And what was so cool about it is it just like reawakened, it never leaves me. It's always such a part of me, because something that's always been a big part of my story since I was a little girl, a child, is clothes and expression
It's very
through
Libra of
style.
you.
Of
Beauty.
course,
Yes.
very, like, love it.
Yes.
Always laid my clothes out the night before.
Mm-hmm.
I love shopping my parents' closets, wearing their clothes to school. I was always,
I
wearing
love
the
that.
weird outfits that no one else is wearing. But it was something that always lit me up. And especially as someone that has had so much mental health, struggles, like, that would be the one thing that I could still always engage with. I mean, that's what I got. I got my college degree in fashion design and merchandising, and I started out my career. I worked at Nordstrom and Marc Jacobs and all of that, and had these really cool fashion experiences. And so it's something that, I still always come back to. And my clothes now, like if I'm in a bad mood, it's like I can go in my closet and put on an outfit, dress myself intuitively, and everything shifts for me. Everything shifts. And all of a sudden, I feel like, okay, maybe I can do this thing that I've been avoiding or that I don't believe I can do or whatever. It changes my whole frequency so strongly that I really wanted to help bring that to other people, because I just simply believed in it, especially in 2020, a time where people were sitting at home a lot, myself included, not getting dressed. There was no real need to. It was very easy for me to sink into depression. And I found that starting to happen. And so the creative gifts, the clothes and styling my home and bringing in bright colors, that was a way that really woke me back up and helped me get through some of the harder times.
Wow. I love the phrase shopping my parents' closets. That's hilarious. But, I just think about your Venus in the 12th house, and thinking about Venus and using Venus as a tool to understand the fashion of whoever it is you're styling. But for you, like, when you put on a different outfit, it changes you. This is like the 12th house Venus is the fantasy. So it's like when you put on a different outfit, you're a different person. It changes
Yes.
your whole energy.
Yes. And I also think about my Neptune in the first house. And Neptune is like the higher octave of Venus. And it's like helping me shape shift into these different parts of my personality.
Yes.
And that's who I become. Like when I go
Yes.
to my closet, I'm like, who do I want to be
You're
today? And
morphing into
I
something different. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And very often I'll go, you can see me in a week and it goes through these, you can see my moods and you can see,
Yes.
oh, yep, this day she wasn't feeling it. This day she really was feeling it. This day she definitely needs some energy. So she's wearing bright colors. Like, and so that's been a part of my magic, I think, when I could really
Wow.
see that it reflected in my astrology chart too. It's like,
Yes.
that's why this has always really
Yes.
lit me up so much.
And with Neptune in your first house, it's like you're helping create the fantasy for the people that are viewing you in the outfit. It's like sending their imagination into some other space. But just thinking about the morphine, like, so explain, like, you morph from the the health coach to the stylist to the astrology stylist, to where are you today? Where has this all evolved to in your practice today, and who are you? What's your focus?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? Because I think I think for me, I like it, I like both. The astrology and the style
Yeah.
resonate for me deeply. And
Yes.
so I do both. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm lucky enough to do both. I feel called and inspired to do both. And for some clients, I am able to bridge it. I have an ongoing coaching container called Cosmic Embodiment, and it really blends in a lot of my background. So, we're talking the astrology, of course, and the style exploration and things as, obviously a physical embodiment, but I'm bringing in spiritual practices. And, I'm a certified yoga teacher. That was also something I did in tandem with the health coaching program. So I can bring in, yoga sequences and, particularly like different ways of using your body and your physical environment as a way to tap into your true essence. And so for me it's about the and really loving the and sometimes it's more astrology that I'm working on and sometimes it's more styling. But for now, at least, I think I'm constantly figuring it out and involving it as I go. But for right now, my focus is both, and I love to help people just for style or just for astrology or ideally for the whole enchilada.
Well, I just think it's so beautiful and so inspiring, especially thinking about your astrological code as a eighth house north node in Cancer. You know, it's like you are, in a sense, like nurturing people in vulnerable situations, whether it be they're going through a difficult time, spiritually, energetically in their life, whatever that may be, or, you know, maybe they're confused or need help and guidance on what to wear, and they don't have confidence in their closet. You know, you can nurture them to help find that within themselves by following your soul's purpose.
Yes, and thank you for that, saying that.
Hmm.
I feel very blessed, and I'm humbled, honestly, often when I reflect, because I'm like, people take me into the intimate corners of their
Their
homes. I mean,
home.
a lot
Yeah.
of clients I'm meeting on Zoom, but we're meeting in their closet,
Hmm.
and we are working through their style blocks. And of course, it's not just about the style, it's what's going on underneath the style. Why aren't they wearing the clothes? Why aren't they feeling comfortable? What's the emotional, energetic, blocks that might be, that we can look at together. And I hope to be that safe place where people can feel safe to explore that with me, because not
Yes.
only have I been there a bunch of times myself, but I do feel like I have a real strong knowledge and passion in that area, where I can actually help people and have witnessed amazing transformations for people. And, you know, the astrology just really helps bring more things to life when I'm able to leverage that into the offering. So I
Mm.
still do this service where you can meet with me for an Astro style session. And
Mm.
so it's really not, I'm not personal shopping for you during that
Hmm.
time, but we're really looking at your astrological code, but through the lens of your style, and maybe where you might be blocked from expressing it. And of course, I think it ties into overall creativity. If you're wanting to tap and engage more of your creative muscles, it's a great service. But the astro styling, the astrology can really help point people in the right direction. I feel
Mm.
really strongly about that. It's helped me so much with my own style, not only validating, but also seeing where, oh, this is why I gravitate towards this specific style more often than not, even though I do a range of things that I enjoy. And it's just a really fun way to understand yourself and the way
Mm.
that you like to style things. And often when I've met with people before, it extends into their home too, because it's all
Exactly.
connected things in
Yes.
their home. Yeah. So,
We
there's
always
always
joke
so much
about
to
that in
do.
my house with Gabriella, how like her wardrobe matches our house, you know? It's
Yeah.
like so.
Everything's got to match. It's a vibe.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Makes so much sense. Wow. Yes, I love that. Um, hmm. It's so inspiring, Tiffany. So inspiring to hear your story and to hear how you've gone from that little girl who was confused and couldn't figure out what was going on with her to now figuring yourself out through these different healing modalities, whether it's functional medicine or yoga, but even like the styling and of course the astrology. And now you're sharing in your wisdom with those that are connecting with you, that feel inspired to connect with you. And that's just so, I just think of that axis of Sagittarius rising and Gemini descending. It's like you're somebody who is naturally going to be inquisitive of others. And once you get that information, you're going to share your wisdom in a way that's appropriate to them. And so you're the sage, you're the philosopher, you're and then you take that Libra, which I think of Libra is that's the style, that's the beauty, the beautiful things. It's that is you're like the philosopher of style. The philosopher of
I love
style.
it.
Yes.
I'll receive that title. I've never been called that before, but I'm loving how it sounds.
Yes.
No, thank you, Scott. Seriously.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's I love what you said there, that insight, because for me, it's like I need both. I need to engage that I have such a strong intellectual side of me that loves to dive deep with myself and with clients. Through the astrology is a great way for me to do that. I also love the style and the style expression. And so getting to do both, it just feels like that it represents more of my essence. And so then I'm able to offer that in a hopefully beneficial way to people that might seek it.
Yes.
So yeah, so thank you.
Yes. Well, I
Thank
mean,
you.
and you wanting to dive deep, and
And yeah, we always go deep.
that's the your Mercury in Scorpio,
Yes.
is you have this psychic attunement to delving into other people and what's going on with them, and then your Pisces moon, that intuition, that's you're feeling what they're feeling, you're understanding their vibe, and so it's such a benefit, I imagine, for everyone who's working with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're welcome. It's also just fascinating. Like, I think of clothes too, because like my grandfather, he started a clothing company, and he had a
you.
phrase, that was like, when you look your best, you do your best, or you are your best. And so it was men's dress wear and women's sportswear shop. That's what
Fun.
so like
I feel like I would vibe with
so like the
him.
old like
I love it.
cutouts that we have from like the newspapers is like a man in a suit and like a woman in like a tennis outfit or something like that,
That's
so
awesome. I love the polarity of
yeah,
the different styles. I
yeah,
mean, and I can resonate with that. I'm all across the board every day. Sometimes multiple times a day I'll have outfit changes, and it's like
yeah.
very different extreme styles, but I love that. That's what's so fun about style, but I agree with what he said, because that's always been a way I've noticed I've been able to make it through a lot of my life with a lot of these deep struggles that I have gone through privately and in my personal world and life. Publicly, and again, I think this brings us back to my my stellium in the 10th house
Mm.
in Libra.
Hmm.
I I I know how to present myself, at least on the external surface, mostly well, I'd like to say, hard for me to sometimes own that. But yes, I think I've always used fashion and style. I'm wearing the blazers as like a 20-year-old, and I think it has helped me get opportunities into roles that maybe I was definitely not qualified for otherwise, because I have that good first impression I'm able to
You
give
look the
off.
part.
I look the part, and because I'm feeling good, I'm at least
Yes,
acting like it for,
exactly.
the time that I need to, so I can get the job or whatever, and it's helped open doors for me.
Yeah.
And so I really, it is what it is. I think some people don't wanna feel that way about their appearance or about clothes, but I like to think of it, it's a powerful tool that we're here in the physical world to leverage, and we are in the physical world. And so, why not utilize these tools? And beyond whether or not it opens a door for you, if you feel more confident, you're just radiating your more unique soul frequency anyways,
Mm.
which is ultimately going to align you with only the opportunities that are meant for you. And I
Mm.
fully 100% believe that. So
Wow.
for me, it's a really powerful tool that I do think actually makes a difference in what you can bring in, what you can manifest, and what you can show up as.
I think it's so fascinating too when you think about your north node, south node axis, how, like people, I always try to encourage people, it's like, okay, the south node is what you're releasing, but it doesn't mean that you are forgetting that, and your south node is in the second house, which is that material, which is the clothes, but you're taking it to that next level where you're like, I'm going to understand this person in an energetic way, I'm going to understand their soul, and I'm not
Right.
just going to dress them in whatever I think, I would want to wear, but what I value. But it's like, what do they value? And in order to understand what they value, I'm looking at their astrological code. I'm understanding their big three, but also their Venus, because Venus is the planet of likes and dislikes. It's the goddess of love. And so once I understand where that is, then I'm going to be more critically or even cosmically attuned to where they're coming from, which is where I can take my knowledge of the material and support them in a way that's beneficial to them.
Yes. And you know how long it took me to embody that for myself? Because
Mm,
when I first started learning about my North and South node through our work together,
yes.
first of all, I cried when I learned of what my North node was because I
Hmm.
was so far, I felt like I was so far away from it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm here to
Yes.
be nice to myself, to nurture
Mm,
myself.
hmm.
It was like kind of heartbreaking.
It's a common
Um,
sentiment.
and
Yes.
I could really identify with I've always, loved to shop and fashion and style and buying things, but to the point where, I'd get in credit card debt and I'd finally pay it off and then I'd accumulate it again. And I always just had this excess way more than I needed. And it was filling a void.
Mm,
And so I was just like, well, I got to just turn away from style completely if I'm going to follow my north node. And so for a while, I think I didn't quite understand the nuances within the north and the south node. And when it took me some time of reflection, and of course through our work together, where I realized it's about releasing those, shadowy
yes.
tendencies
The
that
low
are
frequencies.
prone to
Yes.
Capricorn South Node in the second house, which is a Taurus house, and those frequencies exactly.
Hmm.
And but there's a light side, just as there is a shadow to every
Exactly.
frequency. And
Yes.
how can I leverage the light? Because it felt like this more extreme version where I'm cutting off a core part of myself. And so it's like for me in my own journey, it's like that doesn't mean I still don't love buying things or love clothes, but I buy so much less now. I have curated a very intentional wardrobe for myself that's taken me a while to figure that out. But now when I bring stuff in, it's extremely thought about and intentioned. And doesn't mean I don't love quality investment pieces from time to time, but I don't have that like I'm buying things when I'm sad. Like I wait, and I want to be able to gift some of that knowledge to other people because I think that I do have a gift with the light side of the frequency of my Capricorn in the second house, which is having that great, power and style, eye and sensibility. And I also really love to dress clients to their north node. That's been something I've been
Mm.
playing with lately.
What's that
And
like? Yeah.
well, it's fascinating
Yeah.
because it's often, I mean, it depends on the chart, of course, the
Hmm.
person, but so it's often not in the same sign as where their Venus is or
Hmm.
their sun or any of their core three. And so they're not only learning how to embody their north node for themselves and their life in general, but then when they're tapping into elements of that through their style expression, I feel like it's also helping them tap into their soul's, growth and destiny point. So
Mm.
I don't know, that's been a cool thing that I've been playing with more and more.
Sounds very empowering. Very
Yeah, yeah.
empowering. And I'm curious though for you, a thought that came up is you're you said you had like this maybe shopping addiction or you're building up credit card debt, but now that you're in that north node frequency and you realize like I don't have to not shop anymore, but it's about taking that knowledge of fashion and sharing it with the people that are hiring me that I'm now intimate with because they're taking me into their bedroom space, their closets to show me what's in their closet. So does it scratch that itch now that you're spending
Yes.
other people's money to buy
I'm like
for them?
interrupting because I already know what you're about to ask. Absolutely 100% yes.
Yeah.
And that's been such a delight side
Yeah,
effect for me
exactly.
because I'm like, Oh, it really just is. I like to look at pretty things. That doesn't mean I need to own them.
Yes.
It's just as fun to shop for them as it is for me to have it myself.
Yes.
Yay. Like, this is an awesome side effect.
Exactly. And that's when you're
Totally.
in that North Node frequency where you're
Yes.
getting all the joy that you want from that South Node, but you're
Yes.
doing it in a way that's supportive of your North Node.
Yeah, I love that you call that out. Like, yes, that's a keen insight and absolutely a benefit and side effect for me. And also, what's been fun when I do work with clients is when I'm doing their style stuff, if I'm not buying anything for myself, it's still helping me shop my closet more because I'm thinking of things in different ways, like things I haven't incorporated lately. And so it's still pushing me through my own self-discovery, inner
Yes.
work process as a benefit side effect of doing work for other people. And so, like, how cool is that?
That's
And
amazing.
I
Yes,
mean,
because you're
yeah.
rediscovering your own wardrobe in a new way. That's
Yeah.
what's happening through helping other people in figuring out their wardrobe.
Yes.
Yes.
And really being able to appreciate what I
What you
have,
have. Yes.
what I've curated for
Mhm.
myself, how it makes me feel, and just be so grateful. And it's like, this is awesome. I'm like, I love what I get to do. And I get to go on the ride. Sometimes clients will bring me in on phone calls when they're at stores, and I'm in on the FaceTime with them, or, it's really fun.
Yeah.
I really
You get to
enjoy the
shop
work.
for work. That's your job,
Exactly.
is shopping. It's like shopping used to cost you money. Now it's making you money.
Like, who knew? Yeah.
That's amazing, Tiffany. Awesome. Well, it's been such a joy having you here on the weekly transit. I really want to thank you for your vulnerability, for your trust in me and in our audience and everything that you shared. It really means a lot to me and hopefully to those that are listening in. Is there any final words of wisdom that you want to share with the audience, and tell us how to find you? Where can everyone connect with you if they feel inspired to work with you? Where do they go?
Well, thank you, Scott, like, tremendously, from the bottom of my heart, for having me on. Like, I think what I shared at the beginning, I really feel it in my heart now. I feel weight lifted off of me because you make me feel so comfortable, and you've always had that gift where I feel so supported by you. So I'm able to tap into parts of myself that are hard for me to talk about, but end up empowering me. And you really have that gift of working with people in that way. I know it's not just me, but I'm really thankful for that opportunity. And today, this conversation, words of wisdom, what I would say to that point is some of my, darkest moments have led to my biggest breakthroughs.
Wow.
And so if that's coming up, a version of that for you and whoever's listening, I do really believe that it's part of a very potent part of your story and your soul's journey, and there is a light and a breakthrough that's coming if it hasn't already started to glean in. So that's what I could leave. As far as where to find me, you can find me at epiphanywithtiffany.com is my website. And then on Instagram, Epiphany with Tiffany, all one word. And yeah, that's where I am. I
Amazing.
do have a offer code that I would love to extend to
Oh,
your
yeah.
listeners.
Cool.
If they book a 60 or 90-minute reading with me, first time client, use code Illuminate and you can save 10% off your first reading.
Oh,
And I would love to connect with you
amazing.
if
That's
anything
very
I shared helps.
It's very generous of you, Tiffany. Absolutely. So, Epiphany with Tiffany, Illuminate is the promo code to get 10% off a 60 or 90-minute session with Tiffany. That is so generous of you, and you've been so generous with your time and with your energy and everything that you've shared with us. So thank you so much again, Tiffany. And I'm excited to have you back on. Of course, we've talked, and I'm going to have you and Ricky, who I'm going to also be interviewing soon. and to discuss like all the astrology and get in deep with different astrological conversations. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation with you moving forward.
Awesome. I'm here for it. And I would love to meet with both you and Ricky. That'd be so fun doing a
Yes.
collective episode. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome, Tiffany. Well, thanks again,
Thank
and
you.
we will see you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. If you're interested in being a guest on the Weekly Transit, you can email me at scott@theweeklytransit.com. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.